The stars beyond the Perseus Rift had belonged to the Dominion for nearly 6,000 years. At least, that was what every civilized species had been taught. Dominion maps painted their borders in brilliant crimson, stretching across hundreds of inhabited systems. Every trade route, every mining colony, every military checkpoint reminded the galaxy of one simple truth: no fleet crossed the forbidden border without permission. The rule had never been broken, not because the border was impossible to cross, but because every civilization that had ignored the warning had disappeared. The stories differed depending on who told them. Some claimed entire worlds had been reduced to ash within a single day. Others whispered that the Dominion never even fought wars. They simply erased governments, replaced leaders, and made entire species forget they had ever been free. Whatever the truth was, the result remained the same. Nobody challenged them. When merchant captains approached the crimson navigation beacons floating along the border, they altered course without being asked. Even pirates avoided the region. Smugglers would rather fly through black holes than risk a Dominion patrol. Fear had become more effective than weapons. That was exactly why Admiral Kaylor nearly dropped his command tablet when the sensor officer spoke. Unidentified fleet entering Sector 9. Kaylor frowned. Which fleet? No registry, sir. Origin? Unknown. He stood from his command chair. The tactical display expanded across the bridge. Tiny blue icons drifted toward the Dominion border with calm, deliberate precision. There were only 12 ships. Kaylor almost laughed. 12 vessels against the largest military civilization ever assembled? He expected them to stop. Instead, they accelerated. "They're crossing the line," the officer whispered. Silence filled the bridge. For the first time in almost 4 centuries, an unauthorized fleet entered Dominion territory without requesting clearance. Every alarm station across Sector 9 activated simultaneously. Military outposts transmitted emergency signals. Border cannons powered online. Attack cruisers launched from hidden stations. The crimson warning beacon broadcast across every known frequency. "You are entering sovereign Dominion territory. Turn back immediately or face total annihilation." The 12 ships continued forward. No hesitation, no change in formation, no defensive maneuvers, no response. Kaylor narrowed his eyes. "Perhaps they cannot translate our language." Another officer shook her head. They acknowledged receipt. What? They received the transmission and ignored it. The bridge became quiet again. Nobody ignored the Dominion. Nobody. Far beyond the border, aboard the human flagship Resolute, Captain. Evelyn Ross listened to the repeated warnings without changing expression. Her executive officer muted the broadcast. "They're getting impatient." Ross smiled faintly. "They're supposed to. Our escorts are asking whether they should raise shields." "No. What if they fire? Then we'll know exactly what kind of civilization we're dealing with." Around the bridge, nobody seemed nervous. Some officers reviewed navigation charts. Others drank coffee while monitoring engine output. One engineer complained that someone had adjusted the climate controls again. It looked less like a fleet entering hostile territory and more like a routine survey mission. The younger communications officer finally asked the question everyone outside humanity would have considered impossible. "Captain, are we actually not afraid?" Ross looked toward the endless stars. "We didn't travel 3,000 light years to act frightened." The bridge answered with quiet smiles. Humanity had spent centuries exploring regions of space every other civilization avoided. Not because humans enjoyed danger, because history had taught them something important. The most dangerous enemy was the one everyone believed was unbeatable. Earth had seen enough empires, kings who declared themselves eternal, governments convinced they could never fall. Every one of them eventually disappeared. The Dominion would be no different. Back at Sector 9 headquarters, Admiral Kaylor ordered interception. 24 Dominion cruisers emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Each vessel outweighed the human ships nearly 20 to 1. Their weapons alone could vaporize moons. The intercepting fleet surrounded the 12 human vessels from every direction. The tactical display left no escape routes. transmit final warning. The message echoed across the void. You are surrounded. Shut down your reactors immediately. This time, the humans replied. The bridge speakers activated. A calm female voice filled every Dominion command center. This is Captain Evelyn Ross of the United Earth Expeditionary Fleet. Her tone carried neither arrogance nor fear. We acknowledge your territorial claim. Kaylor folded his arms. Then surrender. Instead, Ross continued. We are here requesting diplomatic passage to the Orion Fringe. The request is denied. We expected that. Kaylor frowned. You expected denial? Yes. Then why come? A brief silence followed. Then came the answer. Because your borders are preventing humanitarian aid from reaching 17 independent colonies. The bridge became still. Kaylor checked intelligence records. Those colonies had indeed requested assistance months earlier. The Dominion considered them politically unstable. No foreign vessels were permitted access. Ross spoke again. Millions of civilians are starving. They are under Dominion administration. They asked us for help. That matter does not concern Earth, Ross answered immediately. It concerns humanity. Some Dominion officers exchanged confused glances. The sentence made little strategic sense. Helping strangers located thousands of light years away? Risking war over people who were not even allies? No government operated that way. Kaylor's voice hardened. Withdraw immediately. No. You understand refusing my order constitutes an act of war. We understand. And you still refuse. Yes. The confidence irritated him more than insults ever could. He had expected pleading, negotiation, perhaps desperation. Instead, these humans sounded almost patient, as though they believed time favored them. Kaylor made his decision. Disable the lead vessel. One Dominion cruiser rotated into firing position. Its main ion cannon glowed bright blue. Energy readings climbed. Target lock confirmed. The weapon fired. A brilliant beam crossed the darkness. Every officer expected the human flagship to disappear. Instead, the beam struck an invisible barrier nearly 2 kilometers ahead of the Resolute. Light exploded across space. Ripples spread through empty vacuum like waves across water. When the brightness faded, the human flagship remained untouched. Every Dominion sensor officer stared at impossible readings. No shield signature. What? No detectable shield technology. Then what stopped the beam? We don't know. Ross calmly sipped her coffee. Interesting. Her science officer nodded. So their primary weapons are plasma-ion hybrids. About what we predicted? Within 3%. Ross smiled. Good. Across the Dominion fleet, confusion spread rapidly. The humans had not even raised shields. They had simply allowed the attack to happen. As though they had wanted the data. Kaylor ordered a second volley. 6 cruisers fired together. The combined energy could crack a planetary crust. Again, the invisible distortion appeared. Again, every blast vanished before reaching the human ships. Not absorbed. Not reflected, simply gone. One technician whispered the impossible. It's like space itself refuses to let the weapons reach them. Kaylor suddenly realized something deeply unsettling. The human fleet had not changed formation once. Not after the warnings, not after the encirclement, not after 2 attacks. They were behaving like scientists observing an experiment. Ross finally issued her first command since entering Dominion space. Continue forward. The 12 ships advanced. Straight through the Dominion blockade. No acceleration. No evasive maneuvers. Just steady, deliberate movement. Dominion cruisers scrambled to reposition, but every interception calculation failed. The human ships always appeared exactly where prediction algorithms insisted they should not be. Navigation computers began reporting impossible trajectories. Physics itself seemed to disagree with Dominion mathematics. An operations officer looked terrified. Sir, they aren't avoiding us. What do you mean? They're navigating through gravitational possibilities our systems say don't exist. Kaylor stared at the tactical display. The human fleet crossed directly between two Dominion battleships, separated by less than a kilometer. Collision alarms screamed. Yet somehow, the human vessels slipped through untouched. No impacts, no turbulence, nothing. As though reality itself had bent aside to make room. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kaylor felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, uncertainty. He looked toward the stars where the 12 tiny ships continued deeper into Dominion territory. Then another alarm interrupted the bridge. Long-range sensors had detected something approaching from outside Dominion space. The officer's face turned pale. "Admiral, what is it now?" "They weren't alone." "Explain." The tactical display zoomed outward. Hundreds of new contacts appeared, then hundreds more, then thousands. The computer struggled to count them. Not warships, freighters, hospital ships, engineering vessels, agricultural transports, mobile factories, colony support platforms, and entire civilizations. Humanitarian fleet was waiting beyond the border, holding position until the path was safe. The 12 ships had never been an invasion force. They had been the escort. And every Dominion officer suddenly understood one terrifying fact. Humanity had entered the forbidden border expecting resistance, and had prepared for something far greater than a battle. The tactical display remained frozen for several long seconds, as every Dominion officer stared at the impossible number of contacts gathering beyond the forbidden border. Thousands of civilian vessels waited in disciplined formation behind the 12 human warships. Massive hospital carriers, refinery ships, atmospheric processors, construction platforms, colony transports, and supply convoys stretched across millions of kilometers of space. No invasion fleet in recorded history had ever looked like this. Admiral Kaylor leaned forward. "Identify their military escort," the sensor chief swallowed. "Those 12 ships are the military escort." Murmurs spread across the bridge. "Impossible." "That's all they brought?" "No, Admiral," another analyst corrected quietly. "That's all they believe they need." The statement hung in the air. Kaylor had spent nearly 3 centuries studying military doctrine from every known civilization. Every empire relied on overwhelming force. Every fleet displayed enough weapons to discourage resistance before the first shot was fired. The humans had done the opposite. They had hidden their strength behind cargo ships. That made them either unbelievably confident or unbelievably foolish. Kaylor intended to discover which. Open a direct channel. Captain Evelyn Ross appeared on the main display. She sat comfortably in her command chair, one hand resting on the armrest while the other held a steaming mug. Behind her, officers worked with quiet efficiency. No one appeared rushed, despite being surrounded by an entire Dominion battle group. "You wish to speak, Admiral? You entered our territory illegally." "Correct." "You ignored repeated warnings." "Also correct. You have violated Dominion law." Ross nodded. "I understand." Kaylor frowned. "You admit all of this without argument?" "There is nothing to argue about." "Then explain your actions." Ross leaned back. "The Orion Fringe colonies requested humanitarian assistance 8 months ago. We answered. Your government blocked every relief convoy, so we came personally. You crossed a sovereign border. We crossed an artificial line. It is recognized by every major power. So was every empire before it collapsed." The bridge fell silent. No one had spoken to a Dominion admiral that way in generations. Kaylor narrowed his eyes. "You compare us to fallen civilizations?" Ross smiled politely. "I compare every civilization to history." Before Kaylor could answer, another officer interrupted. "Admiral, the Senate requests a live briefing." The transmission shifted. Instead of a military command center, an enormous chamber appeared. Hundreds of representatives from dozens of Dominion species occupied tiered platforms surrounding a circular floor. Floating holograms projected the 12 human ships into the center of the chamber. The Supreme Chancellor watched Ross with obvious irritation. "So, humanity," Ross inclined her head. "Mr. Chancellor, you have created an international incident. We're aware. You stand inside Dominion territory without permission. Yes, You have one final opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Ross looked directly into the Chancellor's eyes. We're not leaving without delivering the aid. The chamber erupted into angry voices. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others called for arrests. Several military governors insisted the humans were bluffing. The Chancellor finally raised a hand, restoring silence. You misunderstand your position. Ross remained calm. I don't believe we do. You are surrounded. Yes. You are vastly outnumbered. Correct. You have no allies within our borders. Ross answered without hesitation. Starving civilians are not political assets. They are people. Again, confusion spread through the chamber. To the Dominion, humanitarian aid had always been another political tool. Resources rewarded obedience. Food strengthened loyal worlds. Medicine bought influence. The humans spoke as though lives possessed value, independent of strategy. It was a foreign concept. One elderly senator spoke. Captain Ross, why would Earth spend enormous resources helping colonies that cannot benefit you? Ross looked genuinely surprised. Because they asked. The senator blinked. That cannot be your only reason. It is. But there is no profit. No territorial gain. No strategic advantage. Ross shook her head. Sometimes helping people is enough. The chamber became remarkably quiet. No computer could model that kind of decision-making. No Dominion doctrine accounted for it. The Chancellor's expression hardened. If you continue, you will force our hand. Ross nodded once. I sincerely hope you choose another path. The transmission ended. Kaylor immediately received new orders. Prevent the convoy from advancing. Without destroying them? For now. The Admiral understood. The Senate feared the political consequences of firing first, especially against a relief mission. Dominion engineers activated the gravitic wall. Hundreds of orbital platforms awakened simultaneously. Artificial gravity. Generators linked together, creating a barrier so dense that even light bent around it. Nothing larger than a shuttle had ever penetrated the system. The wall stretched across the entire sector. It had stopped asteroid impacts. It had redirected comets. It had once halted a rogue moon. The human convoy approached. Ross studied the sensor data. Remarkable engineering. Her science officer nodded. They're using gravity as a physical obstacle. Elegant. What are your orders? Ross smiled. Maintain speed. The younger officers exchanged uncertain glances. Captain, that's a moon-grade barrier. I know. We'll hit it in 90 seconds. I know. No further explanation came. The convoy continued. Dominion observers watched with anticipation. Surely now the humans would stop. Surely now they would realize they had reached the limit. Instead, the lead ship activated something no Dominion sensor could identify. There was no burst of energy, no massive power spike, just a brief shimmer around the hull. Then the Resolute reached the gravitic wall. It did not break through. It did not blast a hole. It simply passed. The barrier rippled for less than a second before returning to normal. One by one, the remaining 11 warships followed. Then the hospital ships. Then the transports. Then the construction platforms. Every vessel crossed the supposedly impenetrable defense as though it were nothing more than morning fog. Shock swept across every Dominion command center. The chief engineer shouted over the bridge speakers. The wall never failed. Kaylor stared. Explain. The generators remained stable. The barrier maintained full strength. Then how did they cross? We don't know. Another analyst compared the recordings frame by frame. His voice became almost a whisper. They didn't overpower the field. What did they do? They temporarily matched its frequency. Kaylor frowned. Meaning? They convinced the barrier they belonged there. Silence returned. Humanity hadn't defeated the defense. They had understood it. Hours later, the convoy arrived above the first isolated colony. Millions of civilians gathered outside abandoned settlements, staring into the sky as hundreds of relief ships descended through the atmosphere. Food, medicine, water purification systems, portable fusion reactors, medical teams, construction drones. Within hours, hospitals that had lacked power for months were operating again. Children who had survived on emergency rations received fresh meals. Engineers repaired failing atmospheric processors. Entire districts lit up for the first time in years. The broadcast spread throughout Dominion space. Citizens watched human doctors treating alien children without asking about citizenship. Human engineers repaired infrastructure before building accommodations for themselves. No payment was requested. No treaties were demanded. No flags replaced local governments. One Dominion journalist finally asked Captain Ross the obvious question during a live broadcast. What does Earth expect in return? Ross looked puzzled. They're already giving it. What? A chance to do the right thing. Across the Dominion, billions watched in silence. For generations, they had believed compassion was weakness. Now they were watching an entire fleet risk war for complete strangers, and for the first time in centuries. Some began to wonder whether the Dominion's greatest strength had actually become its greatest weakness. The relief operation expanded far faster than anyone in the Dominion had predicted. Within 3 days, 23 neglected colonies had functioning power grids again. Water purification systems were online. Mobile hospitals treated diseases that had gone ignored for years. Human engineers repaired orbital elevators, rebuilt communication networks, and restored damaged agricultural domes. The most surprising part was not the speed. It was what happened after the work was finished. The humans left. They did not occupy cities. They did not demand tribute. They did not install military governors. They simply packed their equipment, left behind the technology the colonies needed to maintain themselves, and moved to the next world. Across Dominion space, journalists began following the convoy instead of the military. Every broadcast showed the same pattern. Humans arrived, they worked, they smiled. Then they disappeared toward another struggling colony. The Dominion Senate was furious. Their authority depended on fear. Fear depended on absolute control. Every report, showing grateful civilians cheering for human relief, teams weakened that control more than any fleet ever could. The Supreme Chancellor convened an emergency session. This cannot continue. One senator suggested arresting every human worker. Another proposed destroying the relief convoy before it reached another system. Several military governors demanded immediate war. Only Admiral Kaylor remained silent. The Chancellor noticed. You disagree? Kaylor answered carefully. I disagree with underestimating them. They have only 12 warships. They crossed our border. They bypassed our defenses. They entered systems we considered inaccessible. They have shown no concern over our military superiority. The Chancellor folded his arms. Then perhaps they are reckless. Kaylor looked directly at him. I no longer believe that. The room became quiet. If they wanted war, Kaylor continued, they have already demonstrated opportunities to provoke one. They never fired. They never threatened. They never retaliated. They only continued their mission. One senator scoffed. Compassion is not strategy. Kaylor answered without raising his voice. No, but confidence is. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Captain Evelyn Ross received a transmission from Earth. The face of Fleet Marshal Daniel Hayes appeared. You've become quite famous. Ross laughed softly. I was hoping to avoid that. The entire galaxy is watching. I know. The Dominion Senate is preparing another response. Ross nodded. They're running out of peaceful options. Hayes became serious. Our long-range sensors have detected movement. Ross already suspected what was coming. How many? Everything. Her bridge fell silent. The Dominion had finally committed its full military. Thousands of warships began converging from every sector. Carrier groups, planetary assault fleets, heavy dreadnoughts, defense stations, reserve armadas. By every measurable standard, it was the largest concentration of military power in recorded history. Any other civilization would have surrendered immediately. Ross simply stood. Inform every civilian vessel to continue the evacuation schedule. What about us? We stay. Hours later, the 12 human warships drifted quietly in open space. Ahead of them stretched a wall of Dominion steel, more than 8,000 combat vessels. Their formation blocked an entire star system. Weapons charged, missile bays opened, strike craft filled the darkness. Admiral Kahlor appeared on the communications screen. His voice carried no anger this time. "Captain Ross, Admiral, it does not have to end this way." "I agree." "Withdraw, I can't." Kahlor sighed. "My orders leave little room." Ross nodded. "I understand. I believe your intentions are genuine." "They are. But if you advance..." Ross finished the sentence for him. "You'll be forced to attack." Kahlor lowered his eyes. "Yes?" For several seconds neither officer spoke. Finally, Ross broke the silence. "I have a question. Go ahead." "Have you actually read the reports from the colonies?" Kahlor hesitated. "I have, and they're difficult to ignore." Ross smiled. "History usually is." The transmission ended. Seconds later, Dominion targeting computers locked onto every human ship, thousands of weapons prepared to fire. Across the galaxy, billions watched the live broadcast. Many expected the end of humanity's expedition. Some expected the beginning of the greatest war ever fought. Instead, every human ship powered down its weapons. Not one cannon charged, not one missile launcher opened. Even defensive systems entered standby. The Dominion fleet hesitated. "They're disarming." "No, they're trusting us." Confusion spread through every command bridge. Military doctrine had no answer for an opponent refusing to prepare for battle. The Chancellor screamed through secure communications. "Fire!" No one moved. Again the order came. "Fire immediately!" Still nothing. Captains across thousands of Dominion vessels looked through their viewports. On their screens they no longer saw enemy warships. They saw the same vessels that had delivered medicine to children, the same crews that had repaired hospitals, the same engineers who had restored dying worlds. One destroyer captain quietly spoke over the fleet-wide channel. "I will not fire," another answered. "Neither will I." Then another, and another. Within moments, thousands of confirmations spread through the fleet. Weapons remained silent. For the first time in Dominion history, an order to begin a war had been refused. The Chancellor shouted in disbelief. "You are committing treason." Admiral Kahlor stood from his chair. "No." He removed the insignia from his uniform and placed it on the command console. "We are preventing one by one." Other admirals did the same. The Dominion had been built on obedience. It changed because ordinary officers chose conscience instead. Ross watched the reports arrive from every sector. She smiled. No shots fired. Her executive officer nodded. Mission accomplished. Ross looked through the bridge window toward the endless stars. Not yet. The following months transformed the galaxy. The forbidden border was dismantled. Trade routes reopened after centuries of isolation. Independent worlds regained representation. The Dominion did not collapse in fire. It evolved. Military resources once reserved for conquest began rebuilding forgotten colonies. Engineers from Earth worked beside Dominion scientists. Medical teams shared research. Former enemies became trading partners. Years later, historians continued arguing about the day everything changed. Some claimed it was when 12 human warships crossed the forbidden border. Others believed it was when the relief convoy ignored every threat. But Admiral Kahlor always gave the same answer during interviews. "It changed the moment we realized the humans were never trying to defeat us. They were trying to remind us what power was actually for." At the entrance of the old Dominion capital now stood a simple monument. It did not depict a battle. It did not celebrate a victory. It showed a human engineer handing a toolbox to an alien child, while a Dominion officer helped them lift it together. Beneath the statue were words that every visitor stopped to read. "The strongest fleet is not the one that wins the most wars. It is the one that gives the galaxy the fewest reasons to fight them." And every captain who crossed that former forbidden border afterward remembered the day 12 human warships entered the Dominion, and weren't the least bit afraid.